His betrayal never stood a chance, Serena Brooks declared, her voice cutting through the Waldorf Astoria's glittering ballroom. Under dazzling chandeliers, as Daniel Wentworth raised his champagne flute at his mother Margaret's 69th birthday gala, guests awaited his toast. Yet Serena, a 30-year-old black CEO of Horizon Realty, had just uncovered a chilling text. Daniel and his mistress, Laura, had plotted to ruin her and seize her empire. That night, she turned their scheme against them, exposing their treachery before New York's elite. How did she unravel their web of lies? What secrets did she reveal? Stay tuned to witness her triumph and decide for yourself. Vote 1 to love this story of vengeance, or 0 if it misses the mark. Serena Brooks stood in the Waldorf Astoria's grand ballroom, her fuchsia off-shoulder gown catching the light like a flame against her dark skin. The mermaid silhouette hugged her curves, its asymmetrical pleats and flowing train, screaming elegance, but her sleek, long hair, cascading like a black silk curtain, felt like her armor. She forced a smile, her heart thudding as she scanned the room. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above, casting golden flecks across the faces of Manhattan's elite. Bankers, judges, socialites, all sipping overpriced champagne and laughing too loudly. This was Margaret Wentworth's world, not hers. Serena had built Horizon Realty from a Brooklyn basement, but here she was still the outsider, the black woman who dared to marry into old money. Why do I still feel like I'm auditioning for them? She wondered, her fingers tightening around her clutch. Daniel, her husband of 5 years, stood beside her, his tailored tuxedo accentuating his broad shoulders. His smile was warm, practiced, the kind that had charmed her back in college. But tonight, it didn't reach his eyes. He leaned in, his breath tickling her ear. "You're stealing the show, babe," he murmured, but his left hand lingered on his phone, thumb twitching like he was itching to check it. Serena's stomach twisted. Is it me, or is he acting weird? She brushed off the thought, blaming the jet lag from their red-eye flight. But then she caught him glancing at Laura Hensley, his executive assistant, across the room. Laura's silver dress clung to her like a second skin, her blonde bob too perfect, her smile too sharp. Why is she even here, Serena thought, her pulse quickening. Margaret Wentworth, the queen of this glittering circus, glided toward them. Her emerald silk gown screamed old money, but her eyes, cold and appraising, locked onto Serena like a hawk sizing up prey. "Serena, dear, that dress is bold," Margaret said, her tone dripping with something that wasn't quite a compliment. Serena's smile didn't waver. "Thank you, Margaret. I wanted to honor your big day." Inside she seethed. Bold? She means I don't belong. Margaret's lips curved, but her gaze flicked to Daniel, a silent exchange Serena couldn't decode. What was that? Her mind raced. She'd seen those looks before, quick, conspiratorial, but never thought much of them. Now they felt like a warning. The ballroom buzzed with chatter, the clink of silverware against plates, the soft jazz from a live quartet. Serena sipped her champagne, the bubbles sharp on her tongue, but her eyes kept drifting to Daniel. He was working the room now, shaking hands with a senator, laughing with a hedge fund guy. But his right hand, the one not holding his drink, kept slipping into his pocket, where his phone lived. He's never this distracted at these things, she thought. What's got him so jumpy? She scanned the crowd again, catching Laura whispering to a waiter, her hand brushing his arm a little too long. Serena's grip on her glass tightened. Am I paranoid, or is something off? She excused herself, heading for the powder room to clear her head. The hallway was quieter, the hum of the gala muffled by thick velvet curtains. Serena leaned against a marble sink, staring at her reflection. Her makeup was flawless, her hair a glossy cascade, but her eyes betrayed her unease. Get it together, Serena. You're a CEO, not some insecure wife. But the doubt lingered, gnawing at her like a bad deal she couldn't shake. She pulled out her phone, pretending to check emails, but really she was replaying Daniel's behavior. The late nights at the office, the sudden business trips, the way he'd started locking his phone. Stop it, she told herself. You're jumping to conclusions. Then it happened. Daniel's phone, left on a side table near their seats, buzzed. Serena froze, her heart lurching. She shouldn't look. It was a breach of trust. But her feet moved before her brain caught up, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor. She glanced around. No one was watching. The screen lit up with a notification. All set for tonight. She'll be crushed. Laura. Serena's breath caught. Her fingers trembled as she swiped. The passcode, our anniversary, how ironic, unlocking a thread that made her blood run cold. Margaret's got the board ready to call her reckless. We'll take Horizon after the divorce, Laura wrote. Daniel's reply, can't wait to be done with her. Offshore accounts are set. Serena's knees buckled, but she caught herself on the table. They're planning to destroy me. Her mind spun, piecing together the late-night calls, Margaret's snide comments, Laura's smug glances. It wasn't just an affair. It was a calculated plot to steal her company, her life's work. How long have they been scheming? Her chest tightened, betrayal cutting deeper than any knife. But beneath the hurt, something else stirred. Anger, sharp and hot. They think I'll just roll over? They don't know who they're messing with. She slipped back into the ballroom, her face a mask of calm. Daniel was back at their table, chatting with Margaret, his hand still in his pocket. Serena forced a smile, her mind racing. I need proof. I need a plan. She pulled out her phone, her fingers steady despite the storm inside. She texted Marcus Tate, her chief of security. Daniel's cheating, plotting to take Horizon, dig into his finances and Laura Hensley. Now. Then she messaged Vanessa Reed, her lawyer. Emergency. Meet me tonight. Bring everything you've got. As the quartet struck up a new song, Serena took her seat beside Daniel. He reached for her hand, his touch cold. Having fun, babe? He asked, his smile too perfect. Oh, absolutely, she said, her voice smooth as silk. You have no idea what's coming. She glanced at Margaret, who was watching her with that same hawkish stare. They think they've got me cornered. Serena's lips curved, a plan forming in her mind. The gala was just beginning, and so was her fight. Serena Brooks sat back at the Waldorf Astoria's glittering ballroom table, her fuchsia gown shimmering under the chandelier's glow. But her mind was a storm. The jazz quartet's smooth notes faded into a dull hum as her heart pounded, the weight of Daniel's phone still burning in her memory. All set for tonight. She'll be crushed. Laura. The words looped in her head, each syllable a stab to her chest. She glanced at Daniel, laughing with a silver-haired banker across the table, his hand still tucked in his pocket like he was guarding a secret. How long have you been lying to me, she thought, her fingers trembling around her champagne flute. The bubbles now tasted sour, the elegance of the gala, a cruel mockery of her unraveling world. She forced her eyes away, scanning the room. Laura Hensley lingered near the bar, her silver dress catching the light as she leaned close to a guest, her laugh too bright, too practiced. Serena's stomach churned. She's not just his assistant, she's his partner in this, whatever this is. The Tin Non had mentioned Margaret, Daniel's mother, and offshore accounts. Are they all in on it? Her mind raced, piecing together fragments. Margaret's cold stares, Daniel's late nights, the way Laura always seemed to hover too close during board meetings. Serena's throat tightened. I built Horizon from nothing. They think they can take it? She set her glass down, the clink barely audible over the crowd's chatter. Her fingers brushed her clutch, where her phone sat, a lifeline to the truth. She needed to see more, to understand the full scope of this betrayal. Daniel was distracted, schmoozing with a judge now, his charm dialed to 11. Serena slipped her hand into his jacket, draped over the chair, and palmed his phone. Her pulse hammered. This is wrong. But so is whatever he's doing. She stood, murmuring an excuse about fresh air, and slipped into the hallway, her heels muffled by the plush carpet. In the dim light of a quiet alcove, Serena swiped Daniel's phone. The passcode, our anniversary, God, what a joke, unlocked it instantly. The Tin Non thread with Laura was still open, and she scrolled, her breath hitching with each new revelation. Margaret's got the board convinced Serena's reckless. They'll vote her out after the gala, Laura wrote. Daniel's reply, once I announce the divorce, she'll be too humiliated to fight. We'll take her shares and cash out. Serena's knees wobbled, but she gripped the wall, her nails digging into the wallpaper. Divorce? Shares? They're not just cheating, they're stealing my life. Another tin non popped up, this one from Margaret. Make sure the offshore accounts are secure. Laura's handling the dummy contracts. Serena's vision blurred, rage and hurt colliding like a freight train. Margaret's in on this? The woman who'd called her bold like it was an insult, who'd never hidden her disdain for Serena's Brooklyn roots, was orchestrating this with her son. They want to humiliate me in front of everyone. Why? Her mind flashed to every snide comment, every time Margaret had dismissed her achievements. Because I don't belong in their world? Because I'm black? Or just because I'm in their way? Serena's hands shook as she screenshot the thread, her fingers moving on instinct. She forwarded the images to her own phone, then deleted the sent tin and none from Daniel's outbox. They can't know I'm on to them. Her chest heaved, but she forced herself to breathe, to think. She wasn't the girl who'd cried herself to sleep when her first startup tanked. She was Serena Brooks, CEO of Horizon Realty, who'd outsmarted competitors and closed billion-dollar deals. They think I'm weak? They're about to learn. She texted Marcus Tate again, her chief of security, her words clipped and urgent. Found tin and on. Daniel and Laura plan to divorce me and steal Horizon. Margaret's involved. Offshore accounts and fake contracts. Dig deeper now. Then she messaged Vanessa Reed, her lawyer. Need you at the Waldorf tonight. Bring forensic accountants. This is bigger than I thought. Her phone buzzed almost instantly. Vanessa. On my way, lock down your assets. Don't let Daniel suspect anything. Serena's lips pressed into a thin line. Oh, I won't. She slipped back into the ballroom, her face a perfect mask of calm. The jazz had shifted to a slower tune, and Daniel was back at their table, his arm draped casually over her chair. Everything okay, babe? He asked, his smile too smooth, his eyes darting to her hands. Is he checking if I took his phone? Serena's heart skipped, but she leaned in, brushing a kiss on his cheek. Just needed a breather, she said, her voice honey-sweet. You have no idea what's coming. She caught Laura watching from across the room, her smile faltering for a split second. She knows something's up. Good. Margaret approached, her emerald gown swishing, her eyes narrowing as they landed on Serena. You're awfully quiet tonight, dear, she said, her tone laced with something sharp. Is she testing me? Serena's mind spun, but she tilted her head, letting her long, sleek hair fall over one shoulder. Just taking it all in, Margaret. It's a big night for you. Margaret's lips twitched, not quite a smile. Oh, it's going to be memorable, she said, her gaze flicking to Daniel. Serena's skin prickled. Memorable for whom? She sipped her champagne, the cold liquid grounding her as her mind raced. They're planning to announce it tonight, in front of everyone. The thought made her stomach lurch, but it also lit a fire inside her. They want to break me publicly. I'll break them first. She glanced at her phone hidden in her lap. A new tin nan from Marcus. Found a Cayman account in Daniel's name. $500K transferred last month. Digging into Laura now? Serena's jaw clenched. $500,000? From my company? The betrayal cut deeper, but it also sharpened her resolve. As the waiters cleared the appetizers, Daniel stood, tapping his glass with a fork. The room hushed, all eyes turning to him. Serena's heart pounded, but she kept her face serene, her fingers brushing the clutch where her phone held the screenshots. This is it. Whatever he says next, I'm ready. She met his gaze, her eyes steady, but inside she was a hurricane of hurt and fury. You thought you could crush me, Daniel? You're about to meet the real Serena Brooks. Serena Brooks sat rigid at the Waldorf Astoria's ballroom table, her fuchsia gown a stark contrast to the ice in her veins. The jazz quartet's melody swirled around her, but all she could hear was the echo of Daniel's text. She'll be too humiliated to fight. Her fingers, hidden beneath the table, clutched her phone, where Marcus's message glowed. Cayman account confirmed. $500K. Digging into Laura's emails now. Serena's chest tightened, a mix of fury and betrayal clawing at her. $500,000. My money, my company. She glanced at Daniel, who was now charming a congresswoman with that easy smile of his. his hand still grazing his pocket where his phone usually sat. Does he know I took it? Her pulse quickened, but she kept her face serene, her sleek hair falling like a shield over one shoulder. They think they've got me cornered, she thought, her mind racing through the tin non she'd read. Laura's smug words about crushing her, Margaret's role in swaying the board. It wasn't just a divorce plot, it was a heist. How did I miss this? Serena's mind flashed to late-night board meetings where Laura had lingered, her pen tapping too fast, her eyes darting to Daniel. To Margaret's charity lunches that always left Serena feeling small, like she'd never measure up to the Wentworth name. They'd been playing me for months, maybe years. The realization stung, but it also lit a fire in her gut. She wasn't the naive girl who'd scrape by in Brooklyn anymore. She was a CEO who'd outmaneuvered tycoons. They want to fight? They'll get one. Serena excused herself again, slipping into a quiet side room off the ballroom, its velvet drapes muffling the gala's hum. She dialed Marcus, her voice low. "What else you got?" she whispered, glancing at the door. Marcus's voice crackled through, steady but urgent. "Laura's been emailing a shell company tied to Daniel. Fake contracts with your signature, selling client data. Found 200K more in transfers last week." Serena's jaw clenched. "Client data? That's my reputation." She paced, her heels sinking into the carpet. "Can you trace it?" she asked. "Already on it," Marcus said. "I've got a guy hacking into Laura's cloud. Give me an hour." Serena's lips pressed tight. An hour. Before Daniel makes his move. Next, she called Vanessa Reed, her lawyer, who answered on the first ring. "Serena, I'm 10 minutes out. What's the damage?" Serena's voice was steel. "Daniel and Laura are stealing millions. Margaret's helping them rig the board. I need my assets locked down. Now." Vanessa didn't miss a beat. "I've got forensic accountants pulling Horizon's records. We're freezing your accounts as we speak. Anything else?" Serena hesitated, her eyes flicking to the ballroom door. "Get me a way to record Daniel tonight. I want his confession on tape." Vanessa's voice softened, but it was firm. "Done. I'm bringing a tech guy with a discreet audio rig. Stay cool, Serena. Don't tip him off." Stay cool, Serena thought, hanging up. I'm a volcano ready to erupt. She slipped back into the ballroom, her heart pounding, but her steps measured. The air felt thicker now, charged with the weight of what she knew. Daniel was back at their table, his arm slung casually over her chair, but his eyes kept darting to Laura, who was now chatting with Margaret near the dessert table. They're coordinating, Serena realized, her stomach twisting. Laura's hand brushed Margaret's arm, a quick, familiar gesture that made Serena's skin crawl. How long have they been this close? She forced a smile as Daniel turned to her. You okay, babe? You're zoning out, he said, his tone light but his gaze sharp, like he was fishing for something. Is he suspicious? Her mind raced, but she leaned in, letting her fingers graze his hand. Just tired from the week, she lied, her voice smooth as silk. You're not the only one who can play this game. Serena's phone buzzed in her clutch, and she angled it under the table. A text from Marcus. Got Laura's emails. She's been forging your signature on deals since last year. Sending you proof. Attached was a PDF, email chains between Laura and a shady broker, detailing sales of Horizon's client lists. Serena's blood boiled. They sold my client's trust for pocket change. She forwarded the file to Vanessa, adding, use this. Nail them. Her fingers hovered over the screen, itching to confront Daniel right then, but she stopped herself. Not yet. I need more. She glanced at Margaret, who was now whispering to a board member from Horizon, her smile too tight, her eyes too calculating. She's setting me up to look reckless. Why? The waiter poured more champagne, his tray wobbling slightly as he passed Laura. Serena caught the flicker of a glance between them, a split-second exchange that felt rehearsed. Is the staff in on this too? Her paranoia spiked, but she pushed it down. She was Serena Brooks, who'd built an empire from nothing. She didn't crumble. She strategized. She texted Marcus again. Check the staff. Anyone close to Laura or Margaret? His reply was instant. On it. Stay sharp. As the gala's main course was served, Serena's mind churned. She pictured the board meeting next week, where Margaret's lies could sway votes against her. She imagined Daniel's smug face as he announced their divorce. thinking he'd won. They want to humiliate me in front of New York's elite? Her jaw tightened. I'll humiliate them first. She slipped her phone into her clutch, her plan solidifying. Vanessa would arrive soon with the audio rig. Marcus was digging deeper into the money trail. By the end of the night, she'd have enough to bury Daniel, Laura, and Margaret. Daniel leaned over, his breath warm against her ear. Mother's speech is up next. Big moment, he said, his smile too bright, his fingers tapping his glass. Serena nodded, her eyes locking onto his. Big moment for you, huh? Her heart raced, but her face was a mask of calm. You think you're in control, Daniel. You're about to find out how wrong you are. The quartet struck a dramatic chord, signaling the next phase of the gala. Serena's pulse thrummed with anticipation. The trap was set, and she was no longer the prey. Serena Brooks sat at the Waldorf Astoria's ballroom table, her fuchsia gown glowing under the chandelier's golden light. But her heart was a tight knot of fury and focus. The jazz quartet's soft notes couldn't drown out the echo of Daniel's betrayal in her mind. She'll be too humiliated to fight. Her fingers, hidden beneath the tablecloth, gripped her phone, where Marcus's latest text burned. Laura's cloud hacked, more forged contracts, $700K total siphon. Serena's breath hitched. 700,000? They're gutting my company. She glanced at Daniel, now laughing with a tech mogul, his right hand still hovering near his pocket like a nervous tick. Is he waiting for a signal? Her sleek hair fell over one shoulder as she tilted her head, masking the storm inside with a practiced smile. The room buzzed with clinking glasses and fake laughter, but Serena felt the weight of every stare. Margaret Wentworth, in her emerald gown, held court near the stage, her eyes flicking to Serena with a smirk that felt like a slap. She's loving this, Serena thought, her stomach twisting. She thinks I'm clueless, just waiting to be crushed. Margaret's friends, a gaggle of Botoxed socialites, whispered behind their wine glasses, their glances sharp and judgmental. Do they know what's coming? Serena wondered, her pulse racing. She caught snippets of their chatter. Ambitious. Out of place. Words that stung like paper cuts. They've been talking about me all night, setting me up to fall. Daniel leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. Mother's speech is going to be epic, he said, his smile too wide, his fingers tapping his fork in a rhythm that didn't match the music. He's nervous, Serena realized, her eyes narrowing. He's counting down to his big moment. She nodded, letting her hand brush his, her touch light but deliberate. Can't wait, she said, her voice smooth as velvet. You're not the only one with a plan, babe. Her clutch vibrated softly. A text from Vanessa. At the hotel, the tech guy's setting up the audio rig. Meet me in the East Lounge, 5 minutes. Serena's heart skipped. This is it. Time to lock and load. She excused herself, weaving through the crowd, her heels clicking on the polished floor. The air felt heavy, like the room itself was holding its breath. Laura Hensley stood by the dessert table, her silver dress catching the light as she whispered to a board member from Horizon. Their heads were too close, Laura's hand grazing his sleeve. She's working the room, just like Daniel, Serena thought, her jaw tightening. Are they all in on it? Laura's eyes flicked to her, and for a split second, their gazes locked. Laura's smile faltered, her fingers twitching around her glass. She knows I'm watching. Serena kept her expression neutral, but inside she was a coiled spring, ready to snap. In the East Lounge, a dimly lit room with velvet chairs, Vanessa waited with a wiry tech guy in a black suit. Serena, this is Nate, Vanessa said, her voice low. He's got your audio rig. Nate handed her a tiny device, no bigger than a button. Pin it to your dress. It'll catch everything within 10 feet, he said. Serena nodded, her fingers steady as she attached it to the asymmetrical pleat of her gown. How's the asset freeze? She asked Vanessa. Done, Vanessa replied, her eyes sharp. Your accounts are locked. Horizon's secure. Marcus sent more evidence. Email chains between Laura and a broker. They've been forging your signature for a year, selling client data to competitors. Serena's blood ran hot. A year. They've been bleeding me dry. She opened her tablet, pulling up Marcus's latest file. The screen glowed with damning proof, forged contracts with her name, bank transfers to a Cayman account, and an email from Margaret to Daniel. Make sure the board sees her as unstable. I've got the votes lined up. Serena's chest tightened, rage bubbling up. Margaret's been playing puppet master. She scrolled further, finding a new transfer. 200K, dated yesterday. They're moving fast. Too fast. Her mind raced. What else are they hiding? She forwarded the file to Vanessa, adding, "Get this to the DA. I want them buried." Back in the ballroom, the lights dimmed as Margaret took the stage, her voice booming through the microphone. "Thank you all for celebrating my 69th, she said, her smile polished but her eyes cold. Serena slid into her seat, her tablet tucked away, the audio rig humming softly against her skin. Daniel was watching Margaret, but his knee bounced under the table, a telltale sign of nerves. He's gearing up for his announcement, Serena thought, her heart pounding. She caught Laura across the room, now standing near the exit, her phone glowing as she typed furiously. Texting him? Or someone else? Serena's paranoia spiked, but she pushed it down. Focus. You've got the upper hand. A waiter brushed past, his tray wobbling as he set a plate in front of her. His eyes lingered on her a beat too long, then darted to Laura. Another piece of their puzzle? Serena's fingers tightened around her napkin. She texted Marcus. Check the waitstaff. Look for ties to Laura or Margaret. His reply was instant. Got it. Found a waiter on their payroll. Digging deeper. Serena's lips pressed into a thin line. They've got people everywhere. But she wasn't alone either. Vanessa was in the wings, Marcus was on the case, and Nate's audio rig was ready to catch every word. As Margaret's speech wound down, the crowd applauded, but Serena barely heard it. Her mind was a battlefield mapping out the next move. Daniel's going to stand up any minute. He'll try to humiliate me. She pictured the board, swayed by Margaret's lies, voting her out of her own company. She saw Laura's smug face, Daniel's fake regret. Not tonight. Her resolve hardened, her eyes locking onto Daniel as he adjusted his tie, his fingers twitching. You think you've won? You're about to crash and burn. The quartet struck a dramatic chord, signaling the next phase of the gala. Serena's pulse thrummed, her plan locked in place. The stage was set, and she was ready to turn their trap inside out. Serena Brooks sat poised at the Waldorf Astoria's ballroom table, her fuchsia gown shimmering like a beacon, but her heart was a furnace of resolve. The jazz quartet faded into a low hum as Daniel Wentworth stood, his champagne flute glinting under the chandeliers, his smile a polished mask. The crowd hushed, their eyes fixed on him, waiting for the toast Margaret's speech had teed up. Serena's fingers, hidden in her lap, brushed the tiny audio rig pinned to her gown's pleat, its faint hum a reminder of her plan. This is it, she thought, her pulse hammering. He's about to bury me, but I'm ready. Her sleek hair framed her face like armor, but inside she was a storm, hurt, rage, and defiance swirling together. You thought you could crush me, Daniel? Watch this. Daniel cleared his throat, his voice smooth as silk. Tonight we celebrate my mother's 69th, but I have something personal to share, he began, his eyes locking onto Serena with a flicker of pity that made her skin crawl. He's playing the victim already. The crowd leaned in, their whispers dying out. I've been living a lie, he said, his tone heavy with rehearsed regret. My marriage to Serena has been a mistake. I've found true love with Laura Hensley. Gasps rippled through the room, forks clinking against plates as guests turned to Serena, expecting tears or collapse. They're waiting for me to break, she thought, her chest tight. They're all in on it. Margaret's lips curved into a smug smile, while Laura, across the room, stood straighter, her silver dress catching the light like a predator's glint. Daniel pressed on, his voice gaining strength. Serena's leadership at Horizon Realty has been erratic, he said, pausing for effect. For the company's sake, I'll be seeking control of her shares. The accusation landed like a punch, and Serena felt the room's eyes boring into her. Erratic? You're stealing my life's work and calling me unstable? Her mind flashed to the tin nan, the forged contracts, the 700K siphoned from her company. The hurt was raw, but her fury was sharper. She stood, her movements slow and deliberate, her gown's train trailing like a battle flag. The crowd's murmurs stopped, every head swiveling to her. Time to flip the script. "Quite a speech, Daniel," Serena said, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the room like a blade. "Let's see how you like the spotlight." She pulled her tablet from her clutch, her fingers steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. "But you left out a few details." She tapped the screen, and a projector flicked on, casting bank statements across a wall behind the head table. For the past year, Daniel and Laura have siphoned $1.2 million from Horizon Realty into offshore accounts in the Caymans. The crowd gasped, louder this time, as transaction records glowed in stark black and white. "Got you," Serena thought, her heart pounding with grim satisfaction. She swiped to the next slide. Email chains between Daniel and Laura, her forged signature glaring on fake contracts. "They've been selling Horizon's client data to competitors," she said, her voice rising, "using my name to cover their tracks." The room buzzed, guests shifting uncomfortably as Laura's face drained of color. Daniel's smile faltered, his hand gripping the table. "Not so smooth now, are you?" Serena's eyes flicked to Margaret, whose smugness had morphed into shock. "And Margaret," Serena continued, her tone ice cold, "you've been spreading lies about my instability to the board, helping Daniel and Laura plan this takeover." She played a recording from the audio rig, Daniel's voice crackling through. "Once I announce the divorce, she'll be too humiliated to fight." The crowd's murmurs turned to stunned silence. Laura stammered, "This is fake. She's lying." But her voice shook, her eyes darting to the exit. Serena smiled, a predator's grin. "Is it, Laura? Then explain this." She swiped to another slide. Bank transfers dated yesterday, linked to Laura's email. "You moved 200K just last night, thinking I wouldn't notice." The crowd's shock was palpable, a senator whispering to his wife, a board member's jaw dropping. "They're seeing you for what you are," Serena thought, her resolve steel hard. "Thieves. Liars." She turned to Daniel, whose face was now ashen. "Anything to add, babe?" she asked, her voice dripping with mockery. Before he could respond, the ballroom doors swung open. Two NYPD detectives strode in, flanked by Vanessa Reed, her lawyer, whose eyes gleamed with triumph. "Daniel Wentworth, Laura Hensley," the lead detective barked, "you're under arrest for embezzlement, fraud, and conspiracy." The crowd erupted in whispers as handcuffs clicked around Daniel's wrists. Laura's hands shook as she was cuffed, her silver dress looking cheap under the harsh reality of justice. Margaret stood, her voice shrill. "This is outrageous. You can't do this." Serena stepped closer, her gown shimmering, her voice low but lethal. "Oh, Margaret, we're just getting started." She turned to the crowd, her chin high, her hair catching the light like a crown. "I built Horizon from nothing," she said, her words ringing out. "I'm not some pawn in your game. You thought you could humiliate me. You forgot who I am." The guests stared, some ashamed, others awestruck. A judge in the back nodded slowly, as if seeing her for the first time. They're not laughing now, Serena thought, her heart swelling with a fierce pride. The detectives led Daniel and Laura out, their heads bowed, while Margaret sank into her chair, her empire crumbling. Serena's tablet buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Got more." Margaret's tied to a bigger fraud ring. Sending to Vanessa. Her eyes widened. "A fraud ring? This is bigger than I thought." The weight of the revelation settled over her, but it only fueled her fire. They didn't just betray me. They're part of something worse. She glanced at the crowd, their whispers now a roar, and felt the tide turning. "I'm not just saving myself tonight. I'm tearing their whole world down." The chandelier's light bathed her in gold, and for the first time all night, Serena felt unstoppable. Serena Brooks stood in the Waldorf Astoria's ballroom, her fuchsia gown still radiant under the fading chandelier light. But her heart thrummed with a mix of triumph and unease. The echo of handcuffs clicking around Daniel and Laura's wrists lingered in her ears, the stunned silence of the crowd a stark contrast to the jazz quartet's faltering notes. She'd done it, exposed their betrayal, Their theft of $1.2 million from Horizon Realty. But Marcus's text burned in her mind. Margaret's tied to a bigger fraud ring. Serena's eyes flicked to Margaret Wentworth, slumped in her chair, her emerald gown now looking like a costume on a defeated queen. A fraud ring, Serena thought, her pulse quickening. How deep does this go? Her sleek hair brushed her shoulder as she tilted her head, masking the storm inside with a calm facade. The crowd's whispers grew louder, a mix of shock and scandal, as the NYPD detectives escorted Daniel and Laura out. Serena's audio rig, still pinned to her gown, hummed faintly, capturing every gasp, every murmur. I got them, she thought, but the victory felt hollow. Margaret's still here, and she's not done. Margaret's eyes met hers, no longer smug but wild, like a cornered animal. She knows I'm not finished with her. Serena's fingers tightened around her tablet, where Vanessa's latest message glowed. Meet me in the lounge. We've got more on Margaret. Her stomach twisted. More? What else could they be hiding? She slipped away from the table, her heels clicking softly on the polished floor as she navigated through the gawking guests. Their stares, once judgmental, now awestruck, followed her, but she kept her chin high. They thought I'd crumble. Now they're scared of me. In the East Lounge, Vanessa waited with Nate, the tech guy, and a new face, a stern woman in a navy suit, badge glinting on her belt. Serena, this is Detective Alvarez, NYPD Fraud Unit, Vanessa said, her voice low but urgent. She's been tracking Margaret's financials for months. Serena's breath caught. Months? This isn't just about me. Alvarez didn't waste time. Your evidence, those bank transfers, the forged contracts, cracked open a case we've been chasing for a year, she said, pulling out a folder thick with documents. Margaret's been running a fraud ring, targeting real estate firms like yours. She's been using her social clout to funnel money through shell companies. Serena's mind reeled. A fraud ring? Margaret's not just a mean mother-in-law. She's a criminal mastermind. She opened her tablet, pulling up the audio rig's recordings. I've got something you'll want, she said, playing a clip from earlier. Margaret's voice, sharp and commanding, telling Daniel, make sure the board sees her as unstable. I've got the votes lined up. Alvarez's eyes narrowed. That's gold. Ties her directly to the conspiracy. Serena's chest tightened, a mix of vindication and dread. She's been playing this game for years. Vanessa handed her a stack of printouts, bank records showing transfers from Margaret's accounts to offshore entities linked to a network of brokers. She's defrauded at least 5 other firms, Vanessa said. Over $10 million in the last 3 years. Serena's jaw dropped. 10 million. Her mind flashed to Margaret's smug smile, her charity lunches with board members. It was all a front. Why me? Serena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Why go after Horizon? Alvarez leaned forward, her tone matter of fact. You're a threat. A black woman running a billion-dollar company? Margaret saw you as an outsider she could exploit. She's done it before, targeting women who married into her circle, setting them up to lose everything. Serena's blood ran cold. This wasn't personal. It was her playbook. She scrolled through her tablet, finding an email from Marcus. Found 3 more victims. Margaret's been at this since 2018, sending files. Her hands shook. 3 more women? How many lives has she ruined? Vanessa's phone buzzed and she glanced at it, her face grim. Marcus traced the waiter you flagged. He's on Margaret's payroll, feeding her intel on guests tonight. Serena's eyes widened. The waiter? They had eyes everywhere. She turned to Alvarez. Can you get Margaret tonight? Alvarez nodded. With your recordings and these records, we've got enough for an arrest. Conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, the works. Serena's heart raced, a surge of adrenaline mixing with relief. She's going down. Back in the ballroom, the crowd was thinning, but Margaret still held court, her voice shrill as she reassured a cluster of socialites. It's a misunderstanding, she said, her hands fluttering like nervous birds. Serena strode in, her gown catching the light, her presence commanding. Time to end this. She nodded to Alvarez, who'd followed with 2 uniformed officers. Margaret Wentworth, Alvarez called, her voice cutting through the chatter. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and money laundering." The crowd froze, glasses clinking as heads turned. Margaret's face went ashen, her emerald gown sagging like her defenses. "This is absurd," she sputtered, but the cuffs clicked around her wrists. Serena stood tall, her sleek hair gleaming, her eyes locked on Margaret. "You thought you could destroy me?" The crowd's whispers swelled, a mix of shock and awe. A board member from Horizon approached, his face pale. "Serena, I had no idea," he stammered. "Margaret said you were mismanaging." Serena cut him off, her voice sharp. "She lied, and you bought it." They all did. The sting of their betrayal lingered, but her triumph was sweeter. "I'm not just saving Horizon, I'm exposing her entire game." As the officers led Margaret away, Serena's tablet buzzed again. "Marcus, found another shell company, linked to Margaret's charity, $2 million more. DA's building a case." Serena's breath caught. $2 million? This is bigger than I ever imagined. She looked out at the ballroom, the chandeliers dimming as the gala unraveled. The guests who'd once sneered now avoided her gaze, their whispers tinged with fear. They're seeing the real me now. Her resolve hardened, a fire igniting in her chest. This isn't just about me anymore. It's about every woman she's hurt. The night was far from over, and Serena was ready to burn Margaret's empire to the ground. Serena Brooks stood in her newly renovated Manhattan office, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing a glittering city skyline. The brass nameplate on her desk read, "Serena Brooks, CEO, Brooks Global Solutions," a far cry from the Horizon Realty logo that once defined her. 3 months had passed since the Waldorf Astoria Gala, where she'd turned Daniel's betrayal into his downfall, exposing his and Laura's $1.2 million theft and Margaret's sprawling fraud ring. The memory of their handcuffed exits still brought a flicker of satisfaction, but Serena's heart was lighter now, unburdened. "They thought they'd break me," she thought, her sleek hair catching the office's soft lighting as she ran a hand through it. "Instead, they set me free." Her fuchsia gown was long gone, replaced by a sharp blazer, but the fire in her chest burned brighter than ever. Her phone buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. A text from Vanessa Reed, her lawyer and friend. "DA's filing charges against Margaret's network. $15 million recovered. You're getting $3 million back." Serena's lips curved into a smile. $3 million? That's a start. She leaned against the window, the cool glass grounding her as she gazed at the city below. The headlines had been relentless. Black CEO exposes elite fraud ring at gala. And her client list had tripled. Corporations from Chicago to Singapore wanted Brooks Global Solutions, her rebranded firm now specializing in fraud detection alongside real estate. "They tried to steal my empire. I built a bigger one." Her mind flashed to the gala, to Margaret's ashen face as she was cuffed. "You underestimated me, and it cost you everything." But it wasn't just about money or revenge. Serena's gaze drifted to a framed photo on her desk, her with her team, launching the Brooks Empowerment Fund. The fund, born from her own pain, offered legal aid, financial support, and investigative resources to women facing corporate betrayal or abuse. How many others did Margaret hurt, she wondered, her heart tightening. Detective Alvarez's words from that night echoed. Margaret had targeted at least 5 other women, siphoning millions from their businesses. Serena's fund was her way of fighting back, not just for herself, but for them. No one should feel that helpless. Her phone buzzed again. Marcus, her chief of security. "Fund's first case closed. Client kept her business. Wants to thank you." Serena's chest swelled. "This is why I'm here." She walked to a conference room where Vanessa waited with a stack of legal documents. "The DA's case against Margaret is airtight," Vanessa said, sliding a folder across the table. "She's looking at 12 years for fraud and money laundering. Daniel and Laura got 10 and 7 respectively." Serena nodded, her fingers tracing the folder's edge. They're paying for what they did. But her mind lingered on the bigger picture. Alvarez had uncovered more victims, women like her who'd married into elite circles only to be targeted by Margaret's network. How many lives did she ruin? The thought fueled her, pushing her to expand the fund's reach. She'd already partnered with shelters and legal clinics across New York, with plans for offices in Atlanta and LA. Vanessa leaned back, her eyes softening. You're not just a survivor, Serena. You're a game changer. Serena smiled, but the weight of the past lingered. Survivor. That's what they call me now. She remembered the gala, the way the crowd's pitying stares had turned to awe. The board member who'd apologized, the judge who'd nodded in respect. They see me now, but where were they before? Her mind drifted to the nights she'd doubted herself, when Daniel's lies had made her question her worth. Never again. She stood, her blazer sharp, her presence commanding. Let's keep pushing, she told Vanessa. The fun needs to go global. A knock at the door interrupted them. Detective Alvarez stepped in, her navy suit crisp, her badge glinting. Serena, we've got a lead on another player in Margaret's ring, she said. A broker in Miami. Your evidence opened the floodgates. Serena's eyes widened. Another player? This isn't over. Alvarez handed her a file detailing a network that stretched across 3 states, defrauding dozens of investors. Your recordings and Marcus's digging gave us enough to take them down, Alvarez added. Serena's heart raced, a mix of pride and responsibility. I didn't just stop them. I'm unraveling their whole system. As Alvarez left, Serena's phone lit up with a call from Nate, the tech guy who'd rigged her audio at the gala. Got a minute? He asked, his voice warm. I'm in town working with the DA on the Miami case. Thought we could grab coffee. Serena hesitated, her fingers brushing the phone. Nate had been a steady ally, his quiet confidence a contrast to Daniel's flashy charm. Coffee's just coffee, right? She thought, but a flutter in her chest suggested more. Sure, she said, her voice softer than she intended. Maybe there's room for something new. She hung up, her mind drifting to the possibility of trust, of love that didn't come with strings. Later that evening, Serena stood at a fundraiser for the Brooks Empowerment Fund, her new office packed with supporters, lawyers, activists, survivors. She took the podium, her voice steady, her sleek hair catching the light. 3 months ago, I was betrayed by the people closest to me, she began, the room falling silent. They thought they could take everything, my company, my dignity. But I fought back, and now I'm here to help others do the same. The crowd applauded, their faces a mix of admiration and gratitude. This is my legacy, Serena thought, her heart full, not just surviving, but lifting others. A young woman approached her after, eyes shining with tears. I'm Lisa, she said. Your fund helped me keep my bakery after my ex tried to ruin me. I read about your story and fought back. Serena's throat tightened. This is why. She hugged Lisa, feeling the weight of her own journey lift. You're the reason I started this, she said. As the event wound down, Nate appeared, his smile shy but warm. You're changing the world, he said, handing her a coffee. Serena laughed, her first real laugh in months. Maybe I am, and maybe I'm ready to live again. Looking out at the Manhattan skyline, Serena felt a peace she hadn't known in years. Daniel, Laura, and Margaret had tried to destroy her, but they'd only made her stronger. They wrote the wrong ending, she thought, her eyes bright with purpose. This is my story now. Serena Brooks turned betrayal into a battle cry, proving that resilience and smarts can transform pain into power. From the ashes of her husband's plot, she built a legacy, Brooks Global Solutions, and a fund to empower women facing the same deceit. Her story teaches us that no matter how deep the hurt, you can rise stronger, rewrite your narrative, and lift others up. What's a moment in your life when you turned a setback into a comeback? Drop it in the comments and let's inspire each other. Next time, we're diving into another tale of triumph over treachery, so hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to stay in the loop. Thanks for watching, you guys. You're the reason we keep telling these stories. See you at the next one. This isn't a show. This is my wedding. Aisha Carter's voice echoed through the historic Atlanta church, cutting through the fading gospel choir and the growing murmurs of the crowd. Her hands gripped a small bouquet of daisies, her shoulders stiff as she stood in a worn secondhand wedding dress. The laughter didn't stop, not at first. Someone in the pew snorted, "What's this? A maid playing bride?" Another voice sneered, "Did she borrow that dress from the laundry bin?" Aisha froze mid-aisle, her face burning as eyes she'd known for years. Neighbors, co-workers, pierced her with mockery. Phones flashed, capturing her every step. "I see you," she said, her voice rising. "All of you. If this story of courage grips you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? And what time is it?" Aisha Carter's sneakers scuffed the sun-scorched pavement of Peachtree Street, the Atlanta skyline jagged against a July sky thick with heat. Her hands clutched a wilting bouquet of daisies, petals curling like her bank account after months of scraping by. The second-hand wedding dress, $30 from a dusty consignment shop in Decatur, clung to her frame, its faded ivory lace scratching her skin with every step. She'd spent weeks hunting for it, pinning it to fit her curves, convincing herself it was enough. Her heart thumped louder than the bass-heavy trap music blasting from a lowrider cruising past, its chrome rims glinting. Ebenezer Baptist Church loomed ahead, its red brick walls steeped in history, its steeple piercing the haze. This wasn't just another day scrubbing floors for folks who never saw her. This was her wedding day, her shot to be seen. Aisha paused at the church's heavy oak doors, her breath catching. The faint hum of a gospel choir leaked out, warm and soulful, but it couldn't drown the churn in her gut. She'd invited 40 people, co-workers, neighbors, church folks, but the chatter spilling through the cracks sounded like a crowd twice that size. Her fingers tightened around the daisies, stems bending. She'd cleaned houses for half these people, doctors with Buckhead mansions, deacons who tipped her with crumpled fives and fake smiles. Today they'd have to look her in the eye. Today she was more than a maid. She pushed the doors open, the creak slicing through the choir's warm-up like a warning shot. The air inside hit her like a cool slap, heavy with the scent of polished pews and old hymnals. Heads swiveled, eyes locking onto her like spotlights. The gospel harmony faltered, notes dropping into a sea of whispers. Aisha froze, one foot on the crimson aisle runner, her pulse hammering in her throat. The pews were packed, way more than 40 faces. Neighbors from her Vine City apartment block, co-workers from the cleaning agency, church ladies in wide-brimmed hats. They stared, their gazes sharp, slicing through her thrift store gown. "Is that her dress?" A woman in a sleek silk suit hissed, her voice cutting across the pews like a razor. "Girl looks like she raided her grandma's attic." A man in a tailored blazer smirked, leaning back. "What's this? A budget bridal special?" Laughter rippled, low and mean, like gravel underfoot. Aisha's cheeks burned, blood rushing to her face. She caught Caleb's eyes at the altar, his lanky frame stiff in a rented suit 2 sizes too big, his dark gaze steady like it was at Java Jive's open mic nights. They'd met there, over lukewarm coffee and his quiet guitar strums, his voice soft as he sang a melody just for her. That look anchored her now, pulling her forward. She took a step, the gown swishing too loudly in the sudden hush. "She thinks she's pulling this off?" A voice jeered from the back, sharp enough to sting. "That dress is giving Salvation Army vibes." Snickers spread, jagged and cold. Aisha's chest tightened, her breath short. She knew these faces. Mrs. Jenkins, who'd haggle over cleaning fees. Brother Ellis, who'd called her the help like it was her name. Her co-worker, Shanice, staring at the floor, too spineless to speak up. Phones glinted in their hands, lenses flashing like vultures circling. TikTok was probably already eating this up. Aisha's fingers crushed the daisies, petals fluttering to the floor like broken promises. Her knees wobbled, but she locked them in place. She'd scrubbed marble counters till her hands cracked. Saved every penny for this day, this moment. She wouldn't let their shade dim her light. "This ain't no damn show," she said, her voice cracking but loud, bouncing off the stained glass windows. "This is my wedding." The words hit like a fist, silencing the crowd for a heartbeat. A few smirks faltered, but the whispers crept back, bolder now. "She thinks she's Beyoncé in that rag?" A teenager in a Hawks jersey scoffed, his phone angled for the perfect shot. "Who's the groom? Some broke-ass delivery dude?" The laughter swelled, a swarm of bees stinging her ears. Aisha's pulse roared, her palms slick against the bouquet. She pictured Caleb at Java Jive, his calloused fingers strumming a song he'd written for her, his dreams too big for his Amazon van. He'd never asked for her pity, only her time. Every Tuesday after her shift, splitting a turkey sandwich under the cafe's buzzing neon sign. Those nights had built this moment, this love. "I see you," Aisha said, her voice steady now, fierce enough to rattle the chandeliers. "All of you." The crowd stilled, eyes narrowing, caught off guard by her fire. She lifted her chin, her gaze burning, determined to reach that altar for Caleb, for herself. But then, from the corner of her eye, she saw a hand rise in the pews. A silver soda can gleamed, its arc slow and deliberate, aimed straight for her heart. Yo, if this story's got you hooked, smash that subscribe button and keep it 100. Drop a comment, where you're watching from, and what's the vibe right now. The silver soda can slice through the air of Ebenezer Baptist Church, its glint under the chandelier light like a blade aimed at Aisha Carter's heart. It spun, fizz hissing from a cracked tab, before smashing into her shoulder with a wet thwack. Cola sprayed across her thrift store wedding dress, soaking the frayed lace and splattering the crimson aisle runner. Aisha stumbled, daisies slipping from her sweaty grip, their petals scattering like confetti gone wrong. A gasp cut through the crowd, chased by a snicker that swelled into a vicious roar of laughter. Phones stayed raised, their lenses ravenous, already blasting her shame across TikTok with hashtags like "She's Ghetto Bride." "Yo, she's a walking soda stain now," a guy in a Hawks jersey crowed, his voice bouncing off the stained glass windows. Aisha's face burned, blood pounding in her ears like a trap beat. The cola dripped down her arm, cold and sticky, but the laughter stung worse, shredding her pride like cheap paper. She locked eyes with Caleb at the altar, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists like he was ready to charge down the aisle. But he stayed rooted, his steady gaze screaming, "Hold on." Aisha wanted to bolt, to vanish into the polished floorboards, but her feet glued her to the spot. The crowd's jeers grew bolder, a pack of hyenas smelling blood. Who let her think she could pull this off? A woman in a sequined dress sneered, her red lipstick curling like a snake. "That dress is straight up tragic," another voice hollered, sparking cackles that echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Aisha's chest heaved, her breath jagged. She knew these faces. Mrs. Jenkins, who'd nickel and dime her cleaning fees. Brother Ellis, who'd called her girl at 30. Her co-worker Shanice, now hiding behind her phone, filming like this was some reality show. Their betrayal cut deeper than the soda, a knife twisting in her gut. Aisha's fingers crushed the daisy stems, snapping them clean. Her knees shook, but she squared her shoulders, forcing air into her lungs. She'd scrubbed mansions till her hands bled, saved every dime for this day. She wouldn't let their shade break her. "This ain't your damn circus," she said, her voice low at first, then rising like a storm. "This is my wedding." The words cracked the air, silencing the laughter for a split second. A few heads dropped, but the smirks crept back, sharper now. "She thinks she's Beyoncé in that rag?" A teenager jeered, his phone angled for clout. "What's next? A dollar store tiara?" The crowd roared again, louder, uglier. Aisha's pulse thundered, her palms slick. She pictured Caleb at Java Jive, his calloused fingers strumming a melody he'd written just for her, his voice soft as he shared dreams too big for his Amazon van. Those nights had built this moment, her love, her fight. She wouldn't let them steal it. "I vow to stand tall, even when y'all laugh," she said, her voice steady now, ringing through the sanctuary like a bell. "I vow to love with my whole heart, even when you say I ain't worth it. And I vow to never let your judgment, your phones, your shade, tell me who I am." Each word burned her throat, but she pushed them out, her eyes blazing. She took a step forward, the cola-soaked dress clinging to her like a badge. "This gown might be old. I might not have diamonds, but I'm here, choosing love over fear, knowing y'all would tear me down and still walking this aisle." The crowd stilled, caught off guard by her fire. Mrs. Jenkins shifted in her seat, her smirk fading. Shanice lowered her phone, her eyes guilty. Even the teenager hesitated, his thumb hovering over the record button. Aisha's chest rose and fell, her breath heavy but proud. She'd faced their hate and turned it into a vow. Caleb's gaze softened, a flicker of awe in his eyes, urging her to keep going. But then, a murmur rippled through the pews. A woman in the back stood, her face twisted with scorn. "You call that love?" she spat, her voice loud enough to halt the choir. "You're a joke, girl." The words landed like a slap, reigniting the crowd's cruelty. Phones snapped back up, lenses glinting. Aisha's heart lurched, her vow still echoing in her ears. But the weight of their hate pressed harder now, threatening to crack her resolve. Aisha Carter stumbled out of Ebenezer Baptist Church, the heavy oak doors slamming shut behind her like a gavel. The Atlanta sun burned her eyes, but it couldn't touch the cold ache in her chest. Cola still dripped from her thrift store wedding dress, the sticky stains blooming like wounds across the lace. Her daisies, crushed and broken, lay scattered on the church steps, trampled by her own frantic escape. The hum of the city, car horns, distant trap beats, kids shouting down Peachtree, felt like a mockery of her shattered moment. She ripped the veil from her head, the cheap tulle tearing, and stuffed it into a trash can, her hands shaking. The weight of 100 staring eyes clung to her, their laughter echoing in her skull. She walked, head down, through Vine City's cracked sidewalks, her wet dress dragging like a chain. Passers-by stared, some with pity, others with smirks. A teenager on a bike slowed, phone in hand, his grin sharp. "Yo, you're that girl from TikTok. The soda bride?" Aisha's stomach twisted. The video was already out there, racking up views, her humiliation tagged Yurkshanar Ghetto Bride for the world to feast on. She quickened her pace, her sneakers slapping the pavement, but there was no outrunning the whispers. At the corner store, Mr. Davis, who'd sold her coffee for years, looked her up and down. "Rough day, huh?" he said, his pity worse than scorn. Aisha forced a nod, her throat too tight to speak. Back at her cramped apartment, she locked the door and sank against it, her breath hitching. The cola had dried into a crusty stain, the dress now a rag of shame. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to block out the church, the jeers, the phones, the way Shanice wouldn't meet her gaze. Her phone buzzed on the counter, notifications piling up. TikTok, Instagram, texts from numbers she didn't know. "You good, girl?" one read, from a co-worker who'd laughed in the pews. Aisha turned the phone face down, her chest caving under the weight of betrayal. Her mind drifted unbidden to a softer place. 2 years back, Piedmont Park, the air thick with summer and the scent of grilled hot dogs from a nearby vendor. Aisha had just finished a 12-hour cleaning shift, her hands raw, her back screaming. She'd sat on a bench, unwrapping a turkey sandwich when Caleb appeared. Lanky, in a faded Amazon polo, his delivery bag slung over one shoulder. He'd been humming a tune, soft and low, his fingers tapping a rhythm on his knee. "Mind if I sit?" he'd asked, his voice warm like the Georgia sun. She'd shrugged, offering half her sandwich without thinking. "Only took one bite," she'd said, and his smile, crooked, grateful, had lit something in her. Every Tuesday after that, they'd meet at that bench. Aisha brought sandwiches or iced tea from Java Jive, and Caleb brought stories, tales of music he loved, dreams of writing songs that hit harder than Outkast. He'd strummed air guitar, mimicking chords, his eyes bright with a fire she envied. "You ever think about more than this?" he'd asked once, nodding at her cleaning uniform. She'd laughed, bitter. "More ain't for folks like me." But he'd leaned closer, his voice steady. "You're more than they let you see, Aisha." Those words had stuck, blooming in her heart like the daisies she'd carried today. Back in her apartment, Aisha's eyes stung, tears mixing with the cola's sticky residue. She stumbled to the bathroom, catching her reflection in the cracked mirror. The woman staring back looked like a fighter who'd taken a hit. Eyes red, face streaked, dress ruined. She gripped the sink, her knuckles whitening. Had Caleb seen this coming? Had he known they'd tear her apart? His steady gaze in the church flashed in her mind, but now it felt like a question, not an anchor. Why hadn't he stepped in? Why hadn't he stopped them? She slid to the floor, the tile cold against her skin. The church's laughter rang in her ears, but so did her vow. I vow to stand tall, she whispered, her voice hoarse. She'd meant every word, but now they felt hollow, like promises made to a ghost. Her phone buzzed again, another notification lighting up the screen. Aisha didn't look. She curled her knees to her chest, the memory of Caleb's crooked smile clashing with the sting of the crowd's hate, leaving her stranded between love and doubt. Aisha Carter sat on the sagging couch in her Vine City apartment, the cola-stained wedding dress crumpled in a trash bag by the door. The hum of Atlanta's evening traffic seeped through her cracked window, mixing with the low buzz of her phone, still blowing up with TikTok notifications. Serena, ghetto bride. Soda bride. Each ping felt like a jab to her ribs. She hugged her knees, her eyes fixed on the chipped coffee table, trying to block out the church, the laughter, the phones, the way her vow had burned her throat but hadn't stopped their shade. Her fingers twitched, itching to check the comments. But she knew better. The internet didn't forgive. A knock rattled the door. Aisha flinched, her heart lurching. "Who is it?" she called, her voice hoarse from crying. "It's me, girl. Open up." Latoya's voice, sharp but softer than usual, cut through the silence. Aisha dragged herself up, unlocking the door to let her coworker in. Latoya stood there, her braids pulled back, a plastic bag of takeout wings in one hand, her eyes darting like she was carrying guilt. "Brought you some food," she said, setting the bag on the counter. "You look like you ain't eaten since yesterday." Aisha forced a half smile, her stomach too knotted to care about wings. "Thanks," she mumbled, sinking back onto the couch. Latoya hesitated, then sat beside her, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "I saw the video," she said, her voice low. "Everybody's talking. I should have said something in that church, Aisha. I froze." Aisha's jaw tightened, the memory of Latoya's averted eyes stinging fresh. "Yeah, you did," she said, sharper than she meant. Latoya winced but didn't argue. "Look, I'm here now, okay?" Latoya leaned forward, her eyes searching Aisha's. "And I heard something you need to know. About Caleb." Aisha's pulse spiked, her hands clenching. "What about him?" Latoya glanced at the door, like she was spilling forbidden tea. "Word on the street is he ain't just some delivery dude. Somebody at Java Jive said they saw him with a music producer last month, some big shot from Def Jam. Said Caleb was acting all sketchy, like he didn't want to be seen." Aisha's breath caught, her mind racing. Caleb? With a music producer? She shook her head, trying to laugh it off, but it came out brittle. "That's crazy. He's just a guy with a van and a guitar." But Latoya's eyes didn't waver. "Real talk, Aisha. I heard he's got connections. Like maybe he's somebody in the music game, hiding out. You sure you know him?" The question landed like a stone in Aisha's gut, heavy and cold. Her mind flashed to Java Jive 2 years back, the air thick with coffee and cigarette smoke. She'd been wiping down tables after a long shift, her cleaning uniform stiff with sweat, when Caleb took the open mic stage. His fingers danced over the guitar, pulling out a melody that hushed the room, a song about chasing dreams in a city that didn't care. His voice, raw and soulful, had hit her like a wave, making her forget the ache in her back. After his set, she'd slid him a free coffee, her heart tripping over itself. "You wrote that?" she'd asked. He'd grinned, crooked and shy. "Yeah, for nobody but me." That night, they talked until closing, sharing stories under the cafe's flickering neon sign. Every Tuesday since, they'd meet, sometimes at Java Jive, sometimes at Piedmont Park. Caleb would strum air guitar, humming bars he swore he'd record one day. "I want my music to mean something," he'd said, his eyes bright with a fire Aisha envied. "Something real, not just clout." She'd believed him, every word, because he'd looked at her like she was more than a maid, more than a paycheck. But now Latoya's words clawed at her. Had he been playing her, hiding something bigger? Aisha's fingers dug into the couch, her nails biting the fabric. "He never lied to me," she said, but her voice wavered, doubt creeping in like a shadow. She pictured Caleb's steady gaze in the church, the way he'd stood silent while the crowd tore her apart. Why hadn't he stepped up? Was he testing her or hiding something else? Latoya touched her arm, her voice soft. Just watch your back, okay? You don't deserve more hurt. Aisha nodded, her throat tight, but her heart was a tangle of hope and fear. She stood, pacing to the window, the city's lights blurring through her tears. The memory of Caleb's song, raw, honest, clashed with Latoya's warning, leaving her stranded on a razor's edge. Had she loved a man who was real, or a stranger wearing a mask? The question burned, unanswered, as Atlanta's skyline pulsed outside, indifferent to her unraveling world. The air in Ebenezer Baptist Church crackled, thick with the aftershock of Aisha Carter's vow. Her words, "I vow to stand tall," still hung in the sanctuary, but the crowd's venom reignited, their phones glinting like knives ready to carve her deeper. The woman in the back, her scornful, "You're a joke, girl," still ringing, sat down smirking. Aisha stood frozen on the crimson aisle runner, her cola-soaked dress clinging to her skin, her crushed daisies littering the floor. Her chest heaved, her eyes locked on Caleb at the altar, begging for a lifeline. Then he moved. Caleb stepped forward, his rented suit hanging loose, his face no longer just steady but hard, like steel forged in fire. He raised a hand, silencing the choir's faltering notes. "Enough," he said, his voice low but sharp, slicing through the murmurs like a blade. The crowd stilled, phones lowering slightly, caught off guard. Aisha's breath caught, her heart pounding like a drum. What was he doing? "My name is Caleb Isaiah Moore," he said, stepping onto the pulpit, his eyes sweeping the pews. "But some of y'all might know me as Simo, the producer behind half the hits on your Spotify playlists." Gasps rippled through the church, sharp and sudden. Aisha's knees buckled, her mind reeling. Simo, the name behind chart toppers for stars like Cardi and Drake? No, this was her Caleb, delivery guy, guitar strummer, broke dreamer. "I walked away from that life 3 years ago," he continued, his voice steady but heavy. "The Grammys, the mansions, the fake smiles. I chose to live real, to find something true. And I found her." He turned to Aisha, his eyes softening, but her blood ran cold. The crowd erupted, whispers turning to shouts. "Timo, for real? He's worth millions." Phones snapped back up, lenses flashing like paparazzi. Aisha's fists clenched, her nails biting into her palms. He'd lied. All those nights at Java Jive, splitting sandwiches, laughing under the neon sign, he'd been testing her, playing her. Her vow burned in her throat, now tasting like ash. "You knew," she whispered, her voice trembling, but loud enough for him to hear. "You knew they'd rip me apart, and you let me walk into this." Caleb's face fell, his hand reaching out, but she stepped back, the cola stain on her dress a screaming reminder of her humiliation. "Aisha, I didn't mean—" he started, but she cut him off. "You didn't mean to what? Let me stand here looking like a fool while you hid behind your little game?" Her voice cracked, raw and jagged, echoing off the stained glass windows. The crowd hushed, their eyes darting between them like vultures sensing drama. Shanice, her coworker, dropped her phone, her mouth open. Mrs. Jenkins leaned forward, her smirk gone, replaced by shock. "I left that life because it was poison," Caleb said, his voice low, pleading. "Every smile was a lie. Every friend had a price. I needed to know if love could be real, Aisha. You saw me when I was nobody. Just a guy with a guitar. You gave me that." His words hit her like a punch, but they didn't soften the betrayal. She loved him for his heart, his dreams, not some secret bank account or Grammy plaques. And he'd let her face this crowd alone, her dress dripping with their hate. "You tested me," Aisha spat, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. "You let them throw shade, let them soak me in soda to see if I'd break. That ain't love, Caleb. That's a trap." Her voice shook, but it carried, filling the sanctuary. The crowd was silent now, their phones forgotten, their faces a mix of guilt and awe. Caleb stepped closer, his hands open, but she shook her head, her heart splitting. "I stood here, fighting for us, and you watched. You let me bleed." Aisha turned, her wet dress dragging, her steps heavy but deliberate. The aisle stretched before her, longer than it had ever been. She didn't look back at Caleb, didn't see the pain in his eyes or the way his shoulders sagged. The crowd parted, their whispers muted, as she pushed toward the oak doors. Her vow to stand tall, to love without fear, echoed in her mind, but now it clashed with a new truth. The man she'd loved had built their love on a lie. As she reached the doors, the weight of his secret pressed against her, threatening to crush what little pride she had left. Aisha Carter burst through the oak doors of Ebenezer Baptist Church, the Atlanta air hitting her like a slap, thick with summer heat and the tang of exhaust. Her cola-soaked wedding dress clung to her skin, a heavy, sticky reminder of the crowd's cruelty and Caleb's betrayal. Her sneakers pounded the pavement, each step a rebellion against the laughter still ringing in her ears. She didn't look back, didn't dare glimpse Caleb's face, those eyes that had once felt like home, now a stranger's mask. The city pulsed around her, car horns blaring, trap beats thumping from a passing SUV. But Aisha felt alone, her heart a raw wound bleeding pride. She reached her Vine City apartment, slamming the door so hard the hinges groaned. The cola-stained gown hit the floor in a heap, and she kicked it into a corner, her breath hitching. Her phone buzzed relentlessly. TikTok notifications, just soda bride trending, strangers dissecting her humiliation for clout. She swiped them away, her fingers trembling, and sank onto the couch, hugging her knees. The memory of Caleb's voice at the pulpit, Simo, the producer, cut deeper than the crowd's jeers. He'd tested her love, let her walk into that church blind, let her drown in their shade. Her fists clenched, nails biting into her palms. How could she have been so dumb? A knock jolted her. "Aisha, it's me," LaToya called, her voice muffled but urgent. Aisha dragged herself to the door, letting her co-worker in. LaToya's braids swung as she stepped inside, carrying a greasy bag of wings from Waffle House. Her eyes softened, taking in Aisha's red-rimmed eyes. "Girl, you look like you've been through it," she said, setting the bag down. "Eat something before you fall apart." Aisha shook her head, her throat too tight. "I ain't hungry," she muttered, but LaToya wasn't having it. "You need to keep it real with yourself," she said, sitting close. "What Caleb did was messed up, but you stood up in that church. You owned it. Don't let his secret steal that." Aisha's chest ached, LaToya's words stirring the embers of her vow. "He played me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I thought he was just him, not some music hotshot hiding behind a delivery van." LaToya leaned back, her lips pursed. "Yeah, he was shady, but you saw something in him before all this. Was that a lie too?" Aisha didn't answer, her mind drifting to Java Jive, 2 years ago. Caleb was on the open mic stage, his guitar singing a melody that hushed the crowd, his voice raw and honest. "You're more than they let you see," he told her later, over a shared coffee, his crooked smile lighting her up. Those nights had felt real, too real to be a game. She stood, needing air, and grabbed her jacket. "I gotta get out of here," she said, ignoring LaToya's worried look. The streets of Atlanta buzzed, kids on bikes, vendors hawking snow cones. But the stares followed her, sharp and curious. "That's her, the TikTok bride," a woman whispered, phone in hand. Isha kept walking, her sneakers carrying her to the Chattahoochee River, its muddy waters glinting under the dusk. She sank onto a bench, the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and honeysuckle. A street busker strummed nearby, his guitar pulling an old Outcast riff, the notes twisting into her heart. It sounded like Caleb's song, the one he'd played just for her. Her eyes stung, tears spilling as she remembered their Tuesdays at Piedmont Park. Caleb's fingers tapping rhythms on his knee, his stories of wanting to make music that mattered. "I want my songs to feel like home," he'd said, his eyes bright with a fire she'd envied. She'd believed in him, shared her own dreams, small ones, like owning a cleaning business, big ones, like being seen for who she was. But now those memories felt tainted. Had he been laughing at her, knowing he was Simo, the guy behind Grammy-winning tracks? Had he watched her scrub floors, knowing he could buy the houses she cleaned? Aisha's hands gripped the bench, her knuckles whitening. "I stood up for us," she whispered to the river, her voice swallowed by the current. "And he let me fall. The busker's song faded, leaving her with the hum of cicadas in her own heartbeat. Latoya's words echoed, "You owned it, but so did Caleb's. You saw me when I was nobody." Her heart twisted, caught between love and betrayal. Could she forgive a man who'd built their love on a test? Could she trust herself to try? She stood, the river's ripples reflecting the last of the sunlight. Atlanta's skyline loomed, indifferent, but Aisha felt a spark of defiance. She'd walked that aisle, faced their hate, and spoken her truth. Caleb's secret didn't own her. She'd decide what came next. Not the crowd, not the internet, not even him. As she turned back toward the city, her steps steadier, the question lingered, sharp as a blade. Was her love stronger than his lie? Aisha Carter's sneakers crunched on the gravel path leading to Jackson Bridge, the Atlanta skyline glowing orange under a fading September sun. The Chattahoochee River churned below, its muddy ripples catching the last light like a fractured mirror. Her heart thudded, louder than the distant trap beats pulsing from a car stereo across the bank. She'd spent days wrestling with Caleb's letter. "Meet me on the bridge at sunset, just to listen." Its words burning a hole in her pocket. The cola-stained dress, the church's laughter, his bombshell as Simo, the Grammy-winning producer. It all weighed on her, heavy as the humid air. But she was here, not for him, but for herself. To end this, or to start something new, she didn't know yet. She spotted Caleb at the bridge's center, his lanky frame leaning against the rusted railing. No Amazon polo now, just a plain hoodie and jeans. His eyes, those same steady ones from Java Jive, locked on her as she approached. But he didn't move, didn't crowd her. He was keeping his word, just listening. Aisha stopped a few feet away, her hands stuffed in her jacket pockets, her breath short. The city hummed behind her, horns, kids laughing, a street vendor's call. But on this bridge, it was just them, the river, and the truth. "You came," Caleb said, his voice soft, almost lost in the breeze. Aisha's jaw tightened, her fingers curling in her pockets. "Didn't come for you," she said, her tone sharp but steady. "I came for me." His shoulders sagged, but he nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "Fair enough," he said, his voice low, raw. "I don't deserve more than that." Aisha stepped closer, her sneakers scraping the concrete. "You dropped a bombshell in that church, Caleb. Simo? Grammys? You let me walk down that aisle, let them soak me in soda, let them call me a joke, all to test me." Her voice trembled, but she pushed through, her eyes blazing. "I stood there fighting for us, and you watched me bleed. Why?" The question hung between them, heavy as the river's current. Caleb's hands gripped the railing, his knuckles paling. "I was scared," he admitted, his voice cracking. "Scared that if you knew who I was, you'd see the fame, the money, not me. I walked away from that life. Gold records, fake friends, because it was poison. Then I met you, Aisha. You saw the guy with a guitar, not a headline. I needed that to be real." His eyes glistened, but Aisha's chest tightened, her anger flaring. "Real?" she snapped, stepping closer, her breath hot. "You think letting me get humiliated was real? I loved you, Caleb. I shared my sandwich, my dreams, my heart, thinking you were just like me, scraping by, hoping for more. And you were playing a game." Her voice broke, tears stinging, but she held his gaze, refusing to look away. The memory of Java Jive flashed, his crooked smile, his melody wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Now it felt like a trap. Caleb's head dropped, his hands trembling on the railing. "I wasn't playing you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was hiding from a world that chewed me up. You were the only one who saw me, not Simo. But I messed up, Aisha. I should have told you. I should have stood up in that church." He looked up, his eyes raw. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I'm asking you to let me prove I can be better." Aisha's throat burned, her fists clenching until her nails bit her palms. She wanted to scream, to shove him away, but his words stirred something. Hope, maybe, or just exhaustion. She turned to the river, its ripples catching the dying light. "I gave you everything," she said, her voice softer now, heavy with hurt. "And you broke me. But I'm not broken. She faced him, her chin lifting. I forgive you, Caleb. Not for you, but for me. So I can walk away free, not carrying your lies. Caleb's eyes widened, a tear slipping down his cheek. Thank you, he whispered, his voice thick. Aisha nodded, her chest lighter, like a chain had snapped. This doesn't mean we're good, she said, her tone firm. It means I'm choosing me. If you want a place in my life, you gotta earn it. No more secrets. He nodded, his hand still gripping the railing. I'll wait, he said. As long as it takes. Aisha turned, her sneakers steady on the bridge. The Atlanta skyline blazed in the sunset, its lights flickering like possibilities. She walked away, not fast, not slow, her heart still raw but unburdened. Caleb didn't follow, his silhouette fading behind her, but his words lingered. I'll wait. As she stepped off the bridge, the city's pulse wrapped around her. Horns, laughter, a distant